out of anonymity, especially victims of sexual abuse, rape, or bad experience of the transgenders, so on and so forth. Or maybe a whistleblower telling you about a certain bad practices that has occurred in the process of some research. You have to respect that confidentiality. Deception is a big no. Avoiding unnecessary deception is very important. And to see that there is no conflict of interest where you are working. We belong to a diverse, socially diverse country, socially and culturally diverse country. A country with very strong beliefs and faiths which cannot be shaken off very easily. We have to be careful about those sensitive components. Age, teenagers will think differently than adolescents. Youth will have different ideas and thoughts. Gender bifurcation, cultural bifurcation, religious faith, social classes, both educational stratification, economic stratification, cultural stratification, each will have a different perspective on the issue. We have to be sensitive to what they say and not ridicule, confront, or challenge their faith and behavior. Last is justice. Do justice to your work. RCR also includes conflict of interest and commitment. Where there is a conflict of interest, either you avoid it or you face it head on by stating what the conflict is and how you are planning to avoid it. Where you are using animals or experimenting on human beings, animals, especially for the scientists, please have a statement saying what you have done, whether you have upheld the laws that are that require you to follow certain standard behavior. That's very important. Data acquisition, management, ownership and sharing of information should be done very honestly. A very important thing is peer review. Why do we need peer review? We need peer review because the more we have the peers getting involved, A, we get a feedback, B, the gaps are filled up, C, the standards are ensured, D, the acceptability is taken care of. So peer review is very, very important, and it also teaches you how to take the criticism. Normally all of us who are researching, we find it very difficult to take a negative feedback. But peer review teaches us how to take the negative feedback, how to handle it, how to justify our action. So this is very important. Again, I come back to the mentor-mentee relationship. Responsible conduct of research also means to have the same flow with your mentor or supervisor. Having the same flow does not mean that you cannot disagree with your mentor or supervisor. You can, you should, and you have a right to do that. But there is a process. It should be rational. It should be justified. It should be objective, not emotional. And it should be convincing. This is what I call the same wavelength. A rational discussion, an honest discussion on disagreements, or an honest agreement to disagree. Research misconduct includes plagiarism, fabrication, falsification, whistleblowing, so on and so forth. Collaborative research is not only interdisciplinary between the different departments of the university, it also means that you are collaborating with the industry, especially in case of science, management, law, etc. A scientist or a professional, as I said, is a responsible member of the society and has a lot to give to the society. I have taken something from the Wikipedia, though it's not a very good source. It says, violation of standard codes of scholarly conduct and ethical behavior is professional scientific research, and this comes within research misconduct. The Michigan University says, research that deviates from the practice commonly accepted in the discipline or in the academic and research communities generally in proposing, performing, reviewing, reporting, research and creative activities. These violations are misconducts, research misconduct. So the definition of misconduct includes fabrication, falsification, plagiarism in proposing, performing and reviewing research, in or reporting research results. Now what is fabrication? Fabrication is making up something which is not there. You create your own data from nothingness without research. This is called fabrication. Falsification is manipulation. There is a set of data, maybe from the internet or from a certain source of national survey or some other source. You get a set of data and then you change it according to your own liking to suit your finding. This is falsification. And fabrication is making something out of nothing. Plagiarism is copying or using a chunk of somebody else's writing and passing it off as your own. But if you make an honest error or if you express a difference of opinion, this is not a misconduct. That is your liberty. You have the right to say that. You might say the predecessor researcher's finding on this is this and I disagree with it. This is not misconduct. Destruction of research records to avoid detection, wrongdoings or contravention are all misconduct. Redundant publication, something which is already published, you are republishing it, misconduct. Invalid authorship, you have not written a word, but you have incorporated yourself as an author in an article, misconduct. Your attribution and contribution to the article or the research must be very clearly made out. Inadequate acknowledgement, when you do not appropriately recognize the sources of your information or mention the contributors to your information, and management of conflict of interest as per the university or institution policy. These are all misconduct. There is another whistleblowing misconduct. Whistleblowing can be honest, whistleblowing can be dishonest. An honest whistleblowing will tell you what was not done in the previous research, what was the dangerous thing that happened in that research. Say a drug is being discovered and the scientist is claiming a certain result from the test of n number of human beings or guinea pigs or rats or whatever. but actually he has not tested that much. He may have tested one or two. Now, if a whistleblower is bringing that to your knowledge, then well, yes, it's an honest whistleblowing. But there is a whistleblowing misconduct where you are making up that the scientist has not done this and scientist has not done that. The research is undertaken with questionable practices. These are whistleblowing misconduct, where you are alleging poor data management, poor record keeping, poor note taking. These are whistleblowing misconduct. So one important aspect of whistleblowing is you should have sufficient proof to support your allegation. Documentation, evidences are very important to show that what you are saying, what you are proposing is correct or false. A whistleblowing misconduct can lead to criminal charges as well. Therefore, whistleblowing misconduct is to be avoided at any cost, but honest whistleblowing is welcome. The other aspect is authorship. When you are writing, publication the authors must be named on a publication. There cannot be an anonymous writer. It should always be identified. A creative and significant intellectual contribution to the research can be made only when the researcher is identified. But when you are using the author's name, you should make sure that you have the permission of the author to use his or her name. There are instances where the mentors and supervisors become co-authors with students without having contributed anything. This is an unwelcome and unacceptable practice in research. In the research publication, you should not give your name as an author unless and until, when questioned, you are able to show the extent of your contribution. This is very important. There is something called RCR certification, that is the Responsible Conduct Research certification. This is not yet started in our university, except for the fact that we have this plagiarism certificate, which is mandatory. But other universities have these kind of certifications, and that can be taken, or you become entitled to receive RCR certificate if you have attended symposia regarding research methodology or symposia relating to your research. If you have these small discussion groups, which are generally known as brown bag discussion groups, similar kind of things, or heterogenic groups in small groups. There are also contact tower courses where a supervisor or mentor may teach you hands-on for 8 weeks to 2 days as required. Taking RCR instruction that is provided within the existing courses. Right now you are attending my class, actually you are taking an RCR instruction. So processes like this make you entitled to RCR certification. Now, how do we recognize that academic and research integrity is being followed? Clear case of cheating will tell you, in exams or research, will tell you that your integrity was not there. Plagiarism is one. where you are caught and plagiarization is seen. Now, plagiarism can be a little tricky, these days we have these automated applications, apps, which tell us the percentage of similarity. Now, there are subjects where, say for example law, where a student has to quote a particular legal section or state the facts of a case in toto as it is published in the public domain. If the student fails to do that, it is negative integrity. If the student does that, it amounts to plagiarism. So it is a case of between the devil and the deep sea. This is a grey area which is kind of overcome by saying that your plagiarized limit of plagiarization is 10% of your work, so on and so forth. But it does not. It's not a thumb rule that matches every discipline or profession. Fabrication of data, obviously I have spoken about fabrication of data, which is definitely wrong and very dangerous in scientific arena, especially chemistry, biology, etc. Unauthorized collaboration is again an ethics issue. Falsifying grades, we have spoken about falsifying grades, and misrepresenting oneself to gain advantage. I am so and so, so you better open up to me, otherwise I am going to. This kind of blackmailing or use of coercion and force goes against responsible research integrity. What causes us to deviate? We have to understand ourselves. Why do we deviate? Basically, we are all honest human beings. When we said that we want to research, you want to do PhD, you had all honest intentions within you. But down the line, what made you deviate? I would first say fear. Fear of failure. I may not be able to find what I intend to find, and if I do not find that, my research topic or my idea is a flop and it's not going to work. Most of the time we tell the scholar, have you been able to defend your hypothesis? And the scholar, if the scholar says no, we kind of frown and say, well, your research was not good, you did not work well, or you worked on a wrong presumption. Now these are situations which are fearful, embarrassing to the researcher. So the researcher is always trying to protect himself or herself through unethical means. Second, peer acceptance. We all like that our friends, colleagues like to say that, well, so-and-so is a great researcher, does well, this, that and another. That is something which is giving rise to unethical practices, where we fear that our peer group will be critical of us, will not accept us. Earlier when we researched, we had to research manually. So we had to work very hard. We had to, fine comb the data and find the actual data. But these days you type in a few words on the internet and there you are. You have 600 hits and 2000 hits, and then if you browse through that and you just take some, copy some, paste some, and you are done. Now this is a temptation to deviate from the honest research practices. Ignorance. You don't know what is academic integrity. You think, chalta hai, whatever I am doing, it's acceptable. You are unaware that there is something called academic integrity. Then you tend to deviate. If the university didn't have any SOPs and code of conducts relating to research, then you would be so happy. You could do anything, falsify, fabricate, misrepresent. So lack of those legal procedures and requirements will help you to deviate from authentic academic integration. I often tell my friends that the reason crime rate is rising in India is because the criminals are very confident they will not be detected. And even if they are detected, the consequence is going to be nominal. Exactly that applies to research. The moment you feel that, well, nobody is going to find it out, nobody is going to read, nobody is going to look at it, I can do what I feel, and truly nobody is going to detect all those misconduct, then you feel bold enough to deviate from the standards. The other possibility is you are detected. We do find that you have indulged in academic misconduct, but we do not take action. We only call you and say this is not done, and if you do it again, this will not be accepted, blah blah blah, and then you are let off. So you don't feel the pinch, you don't feel the burn, you are not feeling the pressure, deviate. So there should be a very strong implementation machinery with sanctions attached to it. A researcher who has violated academic integrity must be called to book and punished in an exemplary manner. Product-oriented assignments and examinations again help you to falsify, misrepresent. This is a age of rat race competition. Unless you have 100 on 100, you are not going to be anywhere. When you go for a job and people will look at your scorecard and say, oh, you've got only 50%, you are not good enough. The next person has got 90%, that person is much better than you. Now this is a fear of failure, and to achieve that 90%, that elusive 99%, you will deviate, you will copy, you will cheat, you will steal, you will plagiarize. So high stakes in assignments and examination is another reason why we indulge in plagiarism. That means we are under a huge, we live in a huge pressure cooker. Now this is the adverse situation in which you have to stand and practice honesty, trust, fairness, respect and responsibility. The 5 do's. On one hand, you are in the pressure cooker with diverse demands on you. On the other hand, you have to steadfastly follow these qualities. You have to therefore take careful notes and documents your source and data, because you might be called upon to explain your finding anytime. I myself had around 60 kgs of papers which I preserved for about 20 years relating to my thesis. Because anytime I could have been called and asked to prove that the work is mine and prove that I have done an honest research. So preserve the data, your notes, your consultations, everything. Your recordings, make a CD of it, keep it. No hurry. Manage your time in such a way that you are able to pace out your work. Don't hurry yourself. If you hurry, there will be a last minute rush. Oh, I have not done this, I have not written. And then what you do is do umpteen number of mistakes, do umpteen number of falsifications. Therefore, pace it out well. Do it well. Trust yourself. This is very important, and I keep telling to everyone, this generation of you students, you do not trust yourselves. You are so inconfident. You do not believe in yourself. This is very important. To be able to stand up and defend your work, you must have the trust that I have done the right thing. If you are suffering from indecision, if you are suffering from confusion, you are likely to make more mistakes. Therefore, it is very important that you trust yourself, trust your idea, trust your area of research, trust your topic, trust the process and methodology of your research, and believe that you have done everything most honestly and everything with utmost care. This is not for your readers or listeners or examiners, this is for yourself. Research helps you in confidence building. Research helps you to open up newer horizons. And if you are not able to strongly do it, you will not be able to defend what you are trying to do, and you will not be able to face the good or the bad consequences. So, when you are getting ready for research, you have to first do a risk assessment. So, you approach your mentor or your supervisor saying that I want to do the research, and with your mentor or supervisor, you sit down and do your own risk assessment. Whether you will be doing any harm to a community or to a person or group, whether you will be able to get voluntary consent, whether you will be able to protect the confidentiality of the people. Will there be scope for deception on both sides, for your side, and will the people deceive you? Will there be conflict of interest? Will there be compensation? Will the procedure be conducive? Will you be able to follow it? All these are issues that you must sit with your mentor and supervisor and find out. Identifying, discussing and dealing with the ethical issues. This is a process. You have to sit with your self, ponder, think over your worst case scenario. A can happen, B can happen, and the worst C can happen. And if C happens, how am I going to handle it? Talk to experts, talk to experienced people, and see how those situations can be handled. Communicate fully without fear or favor. This is very important. Cryptic communication has become the rule of the day. Even in your personal life, in your professional life, in your academic life, you do not say the whole truth. You do not say everything honestly. Of course, there is the other side that it is not accepted well. But we have to learn to take honest communication